Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first Polkadot ecosystem webinar. Today, we'll be focusing on how Web3 games are going mainstream on Polkadot. And for that, I'm excited to be joined by John Linden, CEO and founder of Mythical Games, Angela Dalton, CEO of Signum Growth and CIO of Dotplay, and Toby Aman, CEO and co-founder of Everloot. So for today, we'll explore the rapidly evolving gaming landscape on Polkadot and discuss why major players are choosing this ecosystem to build the future of Web3 gaming. Quick disclaimer before we get into it. So the information contained in this webinar is fully for informational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice. With that being said, let's delve in. First, let's have a quick introduction for our panelists today. So I'll let them introduce themselves and tell us about their companies. So John, let's start with you. Can you tell us about Mythical Games and what are you guys aiming to achieve?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is John Linden, CEO of Mythical Games. Here at Mythical, our mission is really to bring this world of Web3 into a traditional kind of game infrastructure. And I think what we're seeing is that there's a lot of benefits, right? We're a little bit different than other groups that have been kind of focused more on a crypto native gaming infrastructure. And we've been focused more on how do we take this great concepts of what Web3 could be and bring that to the masses. And we've already seen with a couple games we've had out, with a game called Blankos, a game called NFL Rivals. We've seen some just tremendous opportunities and kind of ability to kind of blend those worlds into a mainstream game experience. So happy to share more soon.
And next we have Angela. Could you introduce yourself and tell us about Dotplay's mission in the Polkadot ecosystem?
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me. So I am an investor and an advisor. So I have a very traditional finance background, have been focused on the video game industry within entertainment since 2003, so for a long time. Started Signum Growth in 2018 with the idea of investing and advising at this intersection of mass markets, emerging technologies, and these new economies that were bubbling up. So we started with Web3. And in terms of Dotplay, we started back in 2019, and actually our first investment was in Mythical. And we also stumbled across Polkadot because we were looking for a blockchain that would actually work for mass market applications and games. And and Polkadot seemed to fit the bill the best. And then we went through a long regulatory process with the SEC, with Polkadot. But anyway, just jumping to Dotplay, the vision really is to build this kind of pivotal hub for gaming in Polkadot and focus on these high growth mass market genres and start there and bring people into Web3 versus starting in Web3. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Angela. And last but not least, Toby, tell us about Everloot and what you guys are building in the Web3 gaming space.
Sure, thanks for having me. I'm Toby. Started in the ecosystem as a user, missed kind of the gaming side of things, and then took matters into my own hand. It started very small, found out like the people loved it, and then it grew from there. The team grew from there, and I think we're going to talk about that later on. But we're a team of 12 now, and we're building to be the casual MMO that runs on your browser. It's actually super exciting times because tomorrow we're launching early access. So we've been in closed beta with beta access for people with token so far, and tomorrow is kind of the big start of the launch campaign. And it's been a few stressful days, but it's kind of feeling to calm down, and that's a very good opportunity for me to talk about that as well today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, I think it couldn't be a better market to do such a launch. So very, very excited for you guys. All right, so let's dive in with our first topic. So let's, looking more at the gaming ecosystem overview, how you approach your strategy in tackling it. So John, let's start with you again. It's been about a year since Mythical Game has made the strategic decision to move everything to Polkadot. How has that transition played out what are the advantages that you've seen, discovered about building on Polkadot versus other chains, and how has that been helpful in building your product?
Yeah, and we've gotten this question quite a bit, so definitely have been thinking through this quite a bit. But I'd say there's really a couple main areas that stood out to us with the Polkadot ecosystem and Polkadot technology in particular. One has been kind of stability. The chain doesn't go down, which is great, and the idea that we can have our own kind of L1 effectively for Mythos chain built on top of this very secure, robust, decentralized relay chain has been very exciting. And so it's allowed us to do a couple things. One, the ability to customize that for the needs of the Mythos DAO, and specifically for gaming infrastructures, has been awesome. We did make some even changes, right? So we came in, we decided not to use kind of the substrate wallet address space. We used an EVM address space, even though we kept the substrate kind of smart contract infrastructure. So we're able to make those changes and deploy them for specifically what we need, but still have the power of that relay chain behind us. So that's been amazing. The other one too is, frankly, we're fairly large. We're the number one in terms of transactions. I think we're actually the number one digital asset chain now. More transactions than anybody else, including Solana, including Bitcoin, including Ethereum on the digital asset side. So I think if you look at something like a crypto slam, Mythos chain is literally number one, and we're number 4 in terms of all sales behind those 3. So it's been, we have a lot of volume already. We see 30 TPS on average, and we're only recording minting and transfers and listings and basic financial operations. We're not listening, kind of including anything else. So we've been able to peak. I think last month we peaked to like 350 TPS just naturally, and we had no issues really with that. So I think there's great pieces there. There's a lot of L2s. Their max capacity is kind of 50, 55 anyway. So we've seen great performance. We've seen great stability. The decentralization, customization is a huge aspect for us. And honestly, the other one that I think is really fascinating is, while there's now other infrastructures, kind of Polkadot was kind of one of the first ones to have this kind of parachain or super chain or whatever you want to call it architecture. The other groups are kind of catching up to that a little bit. The Avalanches, the Cosmos, things like that are out there. But what I love too is the roadmap of where they're heading. I think what Gab and team at Parity and Web3 are really building is really the future. And I think while everybody else is kind of catching up to that architecture, they're inventing the new architecture. And I think that's really important to us, because we think gaming goes beyond just DeFi and marketplace functionality. It leads into social, it leads into game compute, it leads into game distribution over time. And that's our vision of where we head. And it's kind of stepping functions, but we don't want to be on a chain tech that is mostly just the DeFi oriented chain tech, right? And I think that's what you kind of get in the Polkadot ecosystem. It is a great roadmap. They're effectively building a decentralized supercomputer. And I think that lines up with where we see it going. Maybe not where we need it today, but where we need it next year and the year after that. So a lot of great choices there. There's obviously, with any chain, there's challenges and growth challenges and all that. But we've seen great performance, great stability, and great decentralization on this process.
Amazing, and super interesting to see how those decisions get made, and looking at the long-term also evolution of the chain to be able to scale with it. So Angela, over to you now. So as far for Dot Play, can you share what your vision was in creating a comprehensive game hub on Polkadot, and what are the gaps that you're addressing in the Web3 gaming space?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the vision, it really is to start in mass markets, as I mentioned before, and in kind of large games that are already, we want to meet players where they already are, and meet player behavior where it already is. We have this mantra, emerge onto the highway of behavior, that is already happening, which is one of the things that we were, one of the reasons we were attracted to Mythical, because of John's background in AAA gaming and success there, and just deep understanding of player behavior. Because if you don't tap into real player behavior, it's you're not tapping into fun, you're not tapping into true leisure time, true entertainment, and you're really not capturing that audience. So that's our first goal, is really to tap into these truly fun experiences. And the vision really is around this idea that we are on the verge of, AI changed everything kind of. We had this first wave of blockchain games that I was actually involved in back in 2017, 2018. And it was kind of a speculation and trading game. What we think is coming next is true social capital and identity, and kind of authentication of social capital and identity, and tapping into kind of real player behavior. And we really liked it when Mythical changed from play to earn to play for keeps. Is that what you said, John? What was the before play for keeps? You had another one that I also really liked.
I can't. We've rotated through some of them. I'm trying to think which one it was. Yeah.
The point is, it wasn't play to earn.
Yeah.
It wasn't play to earn, because play to earn, that's a job, and jobs are jobs. That's not fun time. So where we think we are now is on the precipice of an explosion of AI generated assets in games. Now, a lot of the big studios are blocking AI, but we think that'll be a futile attempt, because a lot of the indie developers that we speak to in games are already using a lot of these AI tools. And even if they're not, AI, is out of the gate. And so as we start to see this explosion of AI digital assets, we'll also start to see an explosion of inauthenticity by definition. And we think that blockchain is going to solve a different problem this time in this wave, which is really authentication, provenance, and just really being able to tap into kind of what is real and what is not. And as we spend more time in digital spaces, we care more about the authenticity of assets, because we have more and more, time spent, money spent, et cetera. And then the other thing that we really want to tap into is this idea that players are becoming developers, are becoming players. Like the creators are becoming the players themselves. We've seen an explosion of modding recently. Witcher 3 is a well-known game. They just released, modding recently, and they've had an explosion of versions of the game, which is dramatically increased engagement. So this whole idea of creation and playing being one of the same is a really important aspect that we think that Web3 will really play into. So really, we're just trying to lean into kind of the behavior that's already happening. And I don't know, John, I would love for you. I usually go right now to the explanation of quick trades in Mythical, but we have John here, so you should explain that. That's a great example.
I think this is one of the most powerful things that we've been kind of done, honestly, the last 12 months, right? We've been in this space for a while, but there's a lot of foundational work to really pull this off, right? Especially with an existent app store infrastructure, with an existent fiat currency infrastructure, right? So there's a lot of work to get there, and we're at a point now in the industry where we've accomplished that, which is great. So great, the table stakes are kind of there now. And what has been really exciting for us, particularly with NFL Rivals, and then I'll talk a little bit later maybe about FIFA Rivals that's going to be coming up. What's exciting now is now we're able to take concepts, now that we have that foundational layer of development, and really kind of express how do you do this properly for real gamers, right? And I think one of the big things we learned is that, one thing in gaming is gamers are not traditionally crypto traders, right? They don't trade in games like a crypto trader or financial trader does, right? They're not thinking in terms of bids and ask and floor prices and collection values. They're thinking in terms of liquidity, right? If you look at every game in peer-to-peer trading system over the last 20 years, so decades now in gaming, there's two panels, right? This is what I want. This is what I'll give you. And so it's really, that's one of the ways that gamers think. It's the way they trade naturally. So what's great now is we have a concept called quick trades, and it's having an explosion of growth for us on these games. And what it does now is, I'll use NFL as an example. If normally I would want Patrick Mahomes or a Travis Kelce out of the NFL, I could go buy that with a credit card. I could buy it with in-game currency, or I could buy it with crypto, right? So we had that, but now you can actually trade for it. And we've been able to kind of now put this concept to where gamers can trade the way they normally trade. So I want Patrick Mahomes. Maybe I don't want to put $400 in my credit card or use crypto to do it. I want to trade for him. And I can now say, cool, I'll put him in the left side. I can now see all my digital assets on the right side, and I can select a series of them, which are being priced in real time by the order book, right? So there's an active order book for this game, and you can price that in real time, and I can basically put $400 of credit on both sides and trade for that asset. So the consumer now has a cashless transaction to where I received Mahomes and I got rid of my 5 cards I didn't want, And what ended up happening behind the scenes, which is super powerful for gaming, is that it's a mechanism, how they trade and how they are comfortable trading, and something that makes sense for the game itself. But really what happened behind the scenes is we real-time bought Mahomes from one seller, and we real-time sold those 5 other digital assets to potentially 5 different buyers. So the impact on gaming is really twofold. One, we're actually now making money from gamers that traditionally are non-paying. That's an enormous, enormous thing for gaming in general. 95% on average of any games, any free-to-play game, whether it's PC, console, mobile, will never pay you $1, but they're an important part of that ecosystem. So the fact that you can even move percentage points of non-paying into a paying customer is very, very powerful for a $300 billion industry, right? So that's really powerful. The second piece then too that's really exciting is it also starts shifting that economy a little bit. You're now having the players that are just grinding the game for free interacting behind the scenes with the whales, with the collectors, maybe with the speculator, maybe with, we call them minnows, right? People that spend. And that's another powerful mechanism. So I think what we're excited about, sorry for the long answer here, but it's a really critical thing we've seen is that we're now at the point we can use Web3 concepts and Web3 technology to really enhance a traditional mainstream consumer economy. And we're seeing it live. We're seeing major changes happen. So it's an exciting time for where this is going.
Yeah, I would just add one other aspect. Sorry to continue on this long answer, but this is really important. If you ask game developers who are indie game developers in places like Roblox, in Fortnite, even mobile indie developers, they want to stay close to their audiences over time. And we're seeing a melding of Hollywood and games. And we're seeing kind of different formats take off, web series, various extensions, let's say, from what the developer may have originally created as a game or a mini game. And it's, YouTube is a really good analogy to where we are right now. And when YouTube started, everybody was really excited about becoming a creator. And then all of a sudden, Google starts, changing the algorithm and cutting back, shaving back, shaving until nobody has any transparency around how much money they're making. Nobody knows whether or not this is a viable career anymore. And so we want to flip that script in gaming today, because we're starting now with some of these big platforms like Roblox, like Fortnite, Builder Rocket Boy is coming out, all of these creator type platforms and indie developers who are young and new and didn't live through YouTube. And we're trying to build mechanisms that protect them going forward. And that's really our number one goal, is to protect developers.
Super interesting. And thank you for sharing that. And so one thing that you need, obviously, when you want to have an ecosystem of users that are active and active players, is making sure you engage them in the right way. So, Toby, what's your philosophy on player experience for Everloop? And more specifically, how do you balance creating an engaging RPG game that appeals to traditional gamers while still leveraging the unique features of the blockchain?
Okay, gotcha. First of all, John Linden and the Mythical teams, we love what they're doing as trailblazers for the whole market, because I'm going to contrast what has been said a bit from like the indie developer side of things. We're self-indie developer team, and we're quite well connected to kind of the German indie developer scene. And I think there are two ways to look at this. From John's coming like from the very like the mobile side. You have a big presence in the app store. You know how to do your marketing. You're very good at these things. You know how to get these players in a way, and you're kind of approaching the blockchain from another side than we are doing it, because you're kind of sneaking it in as a base technology and enabling new things that aren't possible before. And we love that, because I mean, right now, especially if you talk in the indie community, if we're like honest, people are still very hesitant about the blockchain, and that might be one of the nice words to put it. It's often that they immediately turn around when they see some tokens, because the thing, oh, it's a scam, is still going on. So how do we get rid of that? I think we need trailblazers to prove the market and get the market sentiment changed in a way, and that's what companies like Mythical do great at. Like we definitely need that as a whole community. But what I look at the world is kind of from my shoes as an indie developer who leads a studio kind of that needs to work in the here and now, right? And in the here and now, I personally, I cannot wait until kind of this adoption and the users are there to like from the mass market that say, okay, we like Web3, right? I need to have a product that's attractive right now, and to a market that wants that product in a way. And that's sometimes a tough spot to be at, right? Because if you like just say, I'm opening up the doors and be super accessible, I have wallet abstraction, gas abstraction, everything is abstracted, and I open the door super conveniently at the Fifth Avenue, I'd still have a problem to get the people in, because as soon as they smell the blockchain, they have some problems with that right now at the moment. And that's why we need that sentiment to change. And I think there is a lot behind the scenes going on. Angela, you also mentioned a lot of stuff, and that's why we kind of need to also pick an in-between spot for us, right? We need to take what's really good with Web3 and still kind of abstract the barriers to enter away. So if you join tomorrow, for example, you wouldn't need a wallet. You could I could give my parents the account to go in, but at some point they'll be confronted with, if the top up of gas isn't anymore, at some point later on they might encounter something like that, right? And that's where we take the approach of kind of educating the people on their process, right? So for the first 2 weeks, they won't see anything about gas and stuff until we kind of try to onboard them with the ethos that we have of being decentralized and so on, but not being one of these autonomous worlds, that is like putting all their ethos in, like, I'm being fully decentralized, and then positioning themselves in a niche that like Web 2 doesn't understand really, right? So I think, and that's a tough spot to find kind of your sweet spot in, especially as the indie studios. And I see a lot of people kind of struggling to find where they fit in, just because they don't have the budget to wait for X time long, right? We need a product that works now. And I'm quite confident with our approach that we have of this, taking them on easily, but then kind of educating them on the way. It will still be an early adopter set of people that we're attracting. But until then, there's enough people like across ecosystems that we can attract until the market for us as indie developers is ready, so that we can open the door a bit further. So it's a bit of a hot take in that regard, but that's how we stand to kind of this Web 2, Web 3 balance.
Yeah, can I jump on one more point there? I think that's completely with you on that. I think one thing that was really interesting is when we put out NFL, right? So we put out NFL Rivals about 14 months ago into the App Store, and it was featured in Apple. So yeah, again, we do have some advantages to where we can get featured and things like that based on what we've done. But what was really interesting is we had a lot of people say, man, gamers hate NFTs. You're going to get review bombed. This is going to be a terrible experience. You're up against an incumbent, with Madden that's been around for 37 years with consumers. Like this is not going to work. And what's really interesting, probably the most proud stat I think we have on NFL right now, is that after 14 months, we have probably about 200,000 reviews or something like that from consumers, from user reviews. And Madden is sitting at a 4.7 star rating in the app stores. Actually, 4.7 in iOS. We're sitting at 4.8 in iOS. I think they're sitting at 4.4 in Android or Google Play, and we're sitting at 4.6. So I think that's what's exciting, is that you can shift that narrative. You can make it very seamless to the general consumer. The other stat that's really interesting is we actually now have about 20%. So everybody gets a wallet the way our system works, which so we're kind of guiding it similar. So I think it's not that different. I think it's from a mass scale to an indie scale. I think they're similar concepts, and I think we're all heading in the right direction together. And about 20% of those people have kind of graduated into a real full wallet at this point. I thought that was pretty awesome. I think we'll before we didn't know what the number would be. We kind of like, okay, we still handle 80% of the users behind the scenes a little bit, but 20% of them now are actually, they're on their own wallet and things like that. And that's pretty exciting. I think, again, it is an education process. And I think I've gotten asked before about mainstream gaming. Like when is this going to be mainstream? And I think, to me, the answer is it's not a number, right? It's like we're seeing games now in millions of players. Is it 10 million? Is it 100 million? To me, it's when we eventually don't call it Web3 gaming anymore, right? It's just gaming, and what we're doing, what Everly's doing, what we're doing, it's just as natural, right? You just come in, you play, sure, you have assets, you can move those assets around. When it becomes natural to gamers and you don't call it Web3, just like we don't call out what cloud infrastructure we might be using, that's when it hits mainstream, right? So I think we're getting that, and I think, like I said, we're seeing games now in millions of players. I think next year we'll see games in tens of millions of players, potentially even 100 million players in a Web3 backed game. But I think it's happening fast, which is great.
Yeah, cloud is such a good analogy for that, because there was the same, like, yeah, why should I have my files leave my computer? You know, like there was resistance all over the place.
There was a lot of resistance early on.
Yeah.
So we had a big argument within Activision of do we go bare metal servers or do we go, this whole AWS thing? What's this AWS thing, right? And then we eventually switched it, and I was, we were a top 10 customer of AWS at one point. But it was a paradigm shift again, and now no one talks about it, right? So I think same thing will happen with this new tech, to where it becomes just so seamless to people that we don't really call it Web3 gaming. It's just back to gaming, So yeah, it's we're definitely, like I said, moving in the right direction.
But still, there is a in the meantime, right? And that's also the spot like we have to take,
right? Exactly.
Yeah, but for sure, I think like when you make a payment, or when you do something, like, you don't care about the medium, you care about the action that you're performing.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's much payment provider they're going through for a particular game, right? You just make a payment, go. So.
Yeah, and so I think that's a great segue to talk a bit more about what's behind this to build this, right? What's the technical infrastructure? What the developer experience? So can you elaborate a little bit on the mythical superchain concept? How does that work, and how will that benefit other developers in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so we set this up as what we call Mythos, right? So it's not technically our chain. Mythical is one of the member companies of the Mythos DAO and the Mythos Foundation. So we set this up because we really viewed this as, one, we're all learning together early on, and we really wanted to set up this concept of, hey, let's learn together, let's build together over time, and let's kind of benefit together as this decentralized organization. So we set up everything. Mythos chain is not owned by Mythical. The Myth token powers that chain from the Mythos Foundation, so it's a separate foundation. Mythical is one of the key members. We now have about 25 companies that have joined the Mythos Foundation at this point. Some of them are very big. We've had groups like Sega, Krafton that makes PUBG has joined. We've had a lot of different groups in esports. We've had groups in kind of infrastructure. We've had Web3, and we've also had a lot of Web2, which is really cool to see. And we're getting more that are going to be announcing very soon here. So we're starting to see this opportunity to where we can all build together, and we can build on top of this ecosystem. So again, not owned by Mythical, but is really put out there so that anybody can ultimately kind of join and start participating, which is exciting. Now we've kept it, we've kept this small right now. Like I said, there is an application and things like that of companies coming in, but we do see it over time of that becoming more and more decentralized, and you end up with an infrastructure that anybody can tap into. And I think our focus right now has been mostly around the marketplace tech from Mythical, built on the Mythos chain. But we're now seeing millions of people kind of using that, and we think there's more and more benefit over time to that ecosystem opening up. We also see opportunities around other infrastructures as well. As I mentioned, I think social is one that we're going to really push hard at the Mythos Foundation level, to where opening up social, and what does social mean in this new world, and how do you kind of use social to kind of expand on the economic side of it. So I think that's going to be a second one. We do think cloud gaming is going to be big. So what becomes distribution? Kind of Toby mentioned, like, distribution is hard. It is hard. But once you have a social infrastructure that's tied back to your own identity, and economics that are tied back to your own identity, why not just join games together or move from world to world together, right? And I think that if we do this right, we do it open. Angela kind of hit a great point that, the metaverse right now, I would say at this point, is still kind of UEFN with Unreal, with Fortnite basically. So Fortnite or Roblox, I'd say that's probably the definition of the metaverse right now. But I think what will happen is it will become very open, right? To where I can seamlessly move from Roblox to a Fortnite, or a Fortnite to a Wukong that's out now, or a Wukong to a FIFA Rivals, right? And I think that becomes powerful because you start breaking down these walls. You start having it open. As Angela mentioned, the creator economy becomes verifiable. You know what's going to happen. It's not up to Tim Sweeney or David at Roblox to decide when your payout is or what your rev share is going to be. And I love those companies. Don't get me wrong. There's no shade at those companies, but at the end of the day, they have full control. If they decided for their shareholders to change the payouts, to change how much when they're going to do payment terms, they have full right to do that, and they have the full ability to do that. And I think the creator economy is in the infancy of what it can become. The gaming industry is in the infancy of what it can become. The amount of time people spend in virtual worlds is massive. The number of people now almost half the world's population are in games every single month now. Those are big world populations now kind of moving into this world. And I think to truly unlock an open creator ecosystem, whether you're LVMH or you're a small designer in South Africa, having an open ecosystem is very, very important, I think, for ultimate growth. So we believe very much in it, and I think that it's heading that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and having an open ecosystem, you also want to bring people who are not yet in the ecosystem from outside the ecosystem, more traditional game developers, and bring them into that Web3 ecosystem. And maybe Angela, you can add something. How is Dotplay working to simplify that onboarding process?
Sure, yeah. So Dotplay is really acting like a publisher, like a games publisher, and a new kind of publisher, a Web3 publisher. So traditional game publishers provide services in addition to funding. These are kind of traditional marketing services, QA or quality assurance services, game development feedback, distribution, localization. And in Web3, there are different services that we need to provide. Two of the, we really started with the Polkadot SDK for Unity and Unreal Engine, and we're starting with education. So we're trying to meet people where they are, and we're trying to meet as many developers as we possibly can to find out what their, the Web2 developers, like what are your current challenges, and then whether or not we can help address those challenges. And so we're putting together a suite of services, and one of them, for example, that we actually haven't really quote announced yet, but it's they're going to be coming out with it, is Sortium, is a company that provides 3D asset generation tools. They're going to be the Web3, the Polkadot, powered by Polkadot solution that we're going to be providing to all the studios who we work with, where we help train and kind of train developers on using AI in a responsible way. We're calling it kind of responsible AI powered by Polkadot. So really, we're trying to work to solve issues that we think they're going to have in the future. And then in terms of just practically speaking, a lot of it is directing people, if they have a game that's suitable for the Mythical marketplace, to John and Aaron Goolsby, and also to work with Block Deep Labs to create another space where we could really tap into the Polkadot interoperability. I think I've always felt that interoperability is a key differentiator for Polkadot relative to other ecosystems. And I do see a day when many blockchains, even blockchains that are not in the Polkadot ecosystem, are connecting into Polkadot. And so, we're prepping with the idea that will come to fruition in the future.
Interesting, and it's super exciting to see the interoperability and how you can replicate things from one game to another and then have intercommunication between them. So Toby, now on the other side of things, what aspects and for Everloot, what aspects of the network make it particularly suitable for an on-chain RPG as a developer?
Let me start with how we started here. So we kind of came from the tech perspective. So we had this NFT standard, which is called Remark, that only existed on Kusama back in the day. So that's because we had to start on Polkadot there. We love the tech, and we love that it's been built. It's now an EVM, but we're still here. And that has a few reasons. First of all, I think the community was and is very mature, and it helped us to kind of bootstrap not just the whole community in a short time, but also the team. So I don't think many teams can say that, but we've been we just started, put out an idea, and then people just came to us. We said, no, we're full. And then they just wrote a big Google Doc and said, this is my vision for what you're doing. I'm so inspired what you're doing. Can I just please work for you for free? And we found so many people that were high ranking consultants, whatever, and so on. And we built this team from kind of this base of Polkadot users, basically. And also the community grew with us, and there was a lot of since we showed a lot of respect to the community in terms of their decisions, what they spent with us, and we developed for them further. I think the community sentiment, I haven't seen that in some other blockchains yet at this level. And then what John said, basically the stability of what the game, like for the game going down and missing blocks and having hiccups like that, that's a real issue. If like monetary value is on the line, if you're on the tournament, if there is stuff that decides a fate of an outcome of a PvP arena or something like that, you don't want this to happen, right? So and you want to just you have so many things you need to care about as a Web3 company, like from getting a bank account to something else. You don't want to deal with the chain hiccups. Yeah? So, and that's a big thing why we've started and stayed on Polkadot. And it's also like, I can encourage other teams. There is good co-marketing opportunities. This is a good example here. Like what we're doing, we're a shrimp compared to what Mythical is doing in terms of operation size and stuff like that. But just like seeing that if you consistently put out quality, if you consistently build your community, you can get your seat at the table in a community like this. And that's what I really love about Polkadot.
I would just add also the transition of Mythical's chain from Ethereum to Polkadot. It didn't even really make that much news because it was so kind of, it was just so seamless. I don't know if John, you want to comment on that.
Yeah, it was very anticlimactic for us too, which was fantastic. That's the best thing when it's like, shit, that just worked. It just moved over, which was great. No, I think we did a couple things. We did keep an EVM address space, which probably helped out a little bit. So that was one move we did keep, is we kept the EVM address space, even on top of the substrate chain. But yeah, no, honestly, I think it's an overlooked by maybe people buying and selling tokens, right? Or people pumping tokens, or people pumping the DOT community. But the tech just works, which is great, and I think that's exciting. I think there's always improvements in UI and UX and things like that. I think, but it does, and again, we've really had we've had a lot of success with it so far, and we've seen it grow, and I think we're always a little worried, with what's coming next. This FIFA game that we're going to be bringing out. Generally, FIFA is 20 times the size of an American football market, so it's a huge lift. So now we could be talking, well over 100 million people coming. So that's going to be a challenge for any chain. But I think what's great about it is there's a lot of people wanting to kind of work together on stuff. There's really it is kind of it's a pretty strong community, and people are really wanting to build real utility. And I think that's probably the key difference I've seen in the Polkadot ecosystem over other ecosystems is it's less DeFi, sure, but it's more real utility, right? Things like Energy Web and Origin Trail and Peak and all these startups. I mean, they're real utility that's being built on this chain. I think I put out a tweet a long time ago saying that I'd love to see a study by one of the big research funds that if you take out DeFi and wash trading and all this other stuff that happens naturally across these chains, if you took that out and focus on real users with real applications, I think Polkadot would be by far the number one right now. And so I think that's really fascinating, and I think there's going to be opportunities, right? This is where things like cross-chain messaging and all that stuff really does become big over time. Raise, we know those guys pretty well, raise.com, they're doing gift cards. There's a real scenario to where we could use money from a secondary to convert through a gift card back into primary, right? How do you move from a secondary sales into more money on Apple and Google, or on secondary sales into Xbox or PlayStation? That's a real scenario. It's a real value creation. They're building on Polkadot. We're building on the Polkadot infrastructure. We have our own chain tag, but we can make them very easily compatible. And I think that's where you're going to see this ecosystem really taking off, right? Is when you have real utility and interoperability becomes a real thing, right? To where you can actually start making these deals happen, and it becomes still very permissionless, right? The users are in control. So, that to me is the key difference we've seen.
Yeah, and speaking of growth and user adoption, looking at the player data that you got from the NFL Rivals and other titles, what have you learned about that mainstream user adoption in Web3 gaming? How is that informing your strategy, both for Mythical, but more specifically to Polkadot?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say right now, again, we're a little bit different than the other ones, just because we've been focused very much on consumers that might not have a lot of experience with blockchain. And I think what's really been great so far is we've seen, to be really honest, we did a test back in 2019 as an example, and we had this game called Blankos. It was about 1.5 million players in the game on PC. So it was kind of the first game to come out. It was PC, first game to come out on the Epic Game Store. It took us freaking 18 months to negotiate with Epic to let us do that. But that's been great. And now there's about 130, 140 games, I think, on Epic Game Store. But we learned a lot then, and it was very much we were really playing to a brand new consumer audience. And we had some people saying, well, why don't you let people transfer their assets off your sidechain type tech, which we had, it was still fairly closed, and we admitted it was fairly closed at the time. And why don't you let them kind of move it to mainnet Ethereum and go sell on OpenSea or whatever else? And we were like, cool, let's do it. So we spent a bunch of time, made sure we had the bridges appropriate and all that type of stuff. And I think we had about 1% of the people ever tried it. No one cared, right? And that was kind of an early step. It's like, okay, we really have to step into it. Now, like I said, now we have kind of a way to onboard millions of people, and hopefully soon hundreds of millions of people. And now they're actually creating real wallets, right? Now we're at a point now with where the consumer sentiment is, to like, okay, let's let them link non-custodial wallets into this. And so that's coming now, pretty much now coming to the ecosystem, to where we've kind of stepped through that. Now we have a little bit of harder problems on the regulatory side, just to make sure if we do have any type of pipeline of fiat currency coming in, whether it's coming in from Apple, Google, Epic, Xbox, or credit card, we have to make sure we're protecting that consumer. We have to make sure there's fraud protections, because you're kind of mixing two different systems together. So we're still stepping through that, but I'd say the world is becoming more Web3 very quickly, and the knowledge of these users and the tech stacks are becoming more and more. So I think what we're excited about now is, we're looking heavily into social, right? So social, there will be another product from the Mythos Foundation announced fairly soon around a social system, right? And how do you now use that? Now social to me is part wallet, right? Part marketplace, part communication. And there's other things too. We're looking at things like tournament infrastructures, letting people throw their own tournaments. Something we learned at Call of Duty. When I was in Call of Duty, no matter how many live events you throw as a game developer, the community always has other ideas. They will always want to create their own. So great, let them freaking create their own, and let this infrastructure now become not just DeFi and marketplace, but that same currency is now used in tournaments and social infrastructure, right? So I'm excited where it's going. I think we're stepping, where we are taking kind of steps that I don't think we've ever come out and said, hey, we're going to go from 0 to 100%. We're always kind of step into it, but we're now able to kind of start pulling more people into more activities. And frankly, I think I'm confident that the biggest source of new users into crypto and into exchanges and into DeFi will come from gaming. I mean, it's a pure numbers thing at this point. And that is definitely how we get there. And it's happening fast. Like you said, it's amazing how quickly it's actually starting to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and part and parcel of getting mainstream adoption is getting all those AAA games that everybody wants to use. Yep. And so for Dot Play, for example, how because Angela, you mentioned also indie game developers. So how do you just support both, right? And have both the indie game developers, but also the AAA game developers? How does that work? And maybe from an investor perspective as well.
Yeah, so we are on the ground, in the trenches, on the ground at a lot of these gaming, in these gaming kind of, audiences and ecosystems and conferences pretty much nonstop. And our team is strong enough and has diverse enough backgrounds that we can be in a lot of places at once. So yeah, Eliza Yapanen is, she's based in Helsinki. She's been an animator her whole career. She also developed a virtual pop star that has, I think, 14 billion views on TikTok. So she adds that angle. Nicholas Duzinas actually built a chain in Polkadot, a gaming parachain with Cedric Ayuna, and Keshav Olani is based in India. He's very much entrenched in both crypto and gaming. And then we have, we have these we call them kind of sub-ambassadors, these ambassadors and experts. I think in Roblox, we have the world expert in Roblox, James Purell, who he posts every day on LinkedIn on Roblox. If you want to see, he's a great analyst. And he's on our team as kind of ambassador. We really have to be in all of these spaces. Miles Dorsey in Fortnite, he's developing games. We try to be everywhere. At Slush, we did a one-day event in Helsinki that was from morning until night, and it was back-to-back panels on UGC, user-generated content. So Hollywood meets games. We did it with the largest studio in Roblox, GameFam, and really, it's a lot of education in terms of what blockchain could solve as problems. Again, we don't want to be out pitching blockchain and Polkadot. We want to be asking, what are the issues that you have? Have you thought about these potential future issues, and how could we help solve those? And why Polkadot is the way to do that. So that's really our approach. On support, we try to really ascertain exactly where the landing spot might be for each of these teams. If it's Mythical, we have one group that we met in Singapore, actually, at John's event, at the Mythical event, and we've had a dozen meetings with them so far, and they really want to be on the Mythical chain. So we've done, I don't even think it's gotten to John's desk yet, but we've done multiple meetings in Mythical in different teams to figure out, is this a fit, or is this a better fit standalone in the Polkadot ecosystem? So it's a lot of the fact that we do business development is really key. And the fact that we treat this, you mentioned investment, sorry, this is long-winded, but it really is a melding of business development and the investment process. So we're pretty strict about the investment process. We meet, 5 to 7 teams a week, and we go through a very, kind of methodical approach. We have a first meeting, we've got follow-ups. Our analyst Keshav puts together due diligence questions. We treat it as we would treat an investment. And so it ends up being both BD and kind of investment mindset overlay, which helps a lot.
Interesting. And especially, right, it's especially with moving on to AAA games and more bigger investments, there's a bit of you have to make sure where the capital flows and making sure these have a good hit. Now let's shift shift gears a little bit on building those communities and the blockchain aspect of things, and let's go back to you, Toby. How are you approaching that community building for Everloot? Because many gamers are skeptical of blockchain games. So what are the features that you think will either convince traditional RPG players to give it a try, or maybe just not show as much the blockchain features at first and then have that transition period? How are you thinking about the community building aspect? And I think John might have a few things after that to bounce on that, on the social aspects.
Yeah. Thank you. Good question. It's so I think the community building, Web3, like us starting with Web3 actually gave us an edge on community building in a way, because we didn't start from the same point like Mythical is starting, that they kind of had their asset and then discovered the blockchain. They knew about that. They were early investors right away, knew about kind of the general ethos of the blockchain, and kind of had their stake in terms of an NFT. So this NFT that they got with us at the very start, when we were token gated only, kind of aligned the values a bit, right? So they invested already in us, and then community building was easier in a way. So that gave us a head start, but that can't be it, right? Because we want to move past that. We want to move past, like, I need to own an NFT to join a game, and that's what we're also doing. Like tomorrow, you won't be needing an NFT to do that. But that is one interesting aspect that we can't leave out, that this is something interesting happening here that aligned kind of the indie developers with the community on a very, very early place, right? So we didn't have to raise funds at the start. We sold an NFT collection and then started working, right? And that's special, because since when can you do that, right? Since when can you just try that? Obviously, we couldn't all do full time, but That was an interesting start, and that's what blockchain enabled. So let's look at the solution. Like we've talked about skepticism a lot, so let's talk about what's our solutions to kind of bridging that gap. John, you mentioned, for example, the marketplace and bartering economy of like, hey, I have 2 wood, I need 1 potion. And that's exactly what like we're going down into these use cases that the blockchain enables, where we see a real benefit that could convince the players that it's the right thing to do. Even though if people join that are not so much aligned with with the Web3 values, but like in our game, there's a fully decentralized marketplace where you can really like the in-game tokens, not in terms of crypto, but in terms of like you go logging, you get a few pieces of wood, they can be seamlessly exchanged, right? And then there is stuff like you, Angela, you mentioned quick trades and stuff like that. That's super interesting stuff that we can do as new ways how to fulfill that. But that also means the players need to understand what's happening here, and they need to value what's happening there, right? And you mentioned like how can we get the traditional RPG guys in? So what we're trying to do at the start, I said, we're building a casual MMO in the browser. And what we see is it's kind of a persistent world. And we tell a story, and we want to have the people be part of that story and kind of beyond financial incentives, align them with that story and make them own pieces of that story. So that means, for example, that we're going to use mechanics like governance and stuff like that without like them having to buy them somewhere and get that, but kind of slowly push them towards these concepts and say, there's been a traitor in town. What should we do? Should we expel him? Should we kill him? And then let the global story evolve from there. So this is kind of the world I'm talking about that has a state, and it has always a state tomorrow, and the players are taken onto that journey. And we're trying like, be it the marketplace, be it global storytelling, be it, there are so many ways that we can use kind of the blockchain to the advantage to elevate the game, where we don't think we need to hide it yet. But as I said, right, there's a process of educating the peoples to that point until we can get the normies to validate that. And that's where we need the mythicals and so on to kind of get that more, change the general perception that it's per se, it's a technology, right? It's nothing good or bad, right? It just enables new things like cloud did. Yeah? And that's ultimately like how we're confronting that balance between Web 2 and Web 3.
Great, and keeping the timing in mind, let's keep a bit of time to also think about what's coming up, and looking ahead more generally. And so let's start with Polkadot and gaming. What major gaming development should we expect on Polkadot in 2025? And let's do a quick fire round.
From a tech perspective or from an industry perspective?
From both, from a tech perspective and maybe from a user perspective as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I mean, I think one thing that's really interesting in a stat that's not out there right now is Mythos is actually the largest volume of transactions now for any gaming chain in the world. In fact, I think yesterday we had more transaction volume in the last 7 days, more than even Solana or Ethereum or Bitcoin. So technically, Polkadot is already the #1 gaming chain in the world, right? Because we're built on that ecosystem, and that's not just us, right? I mean, I'm sorry, that's just including us. You start adding other people that are building as well, like Toby and I think there's like 4 or 5 other groups out there that we've really been kind of starting to see pop up. It's the #1 gaming chain in the world by transaction volume and by sales. So I think that's already a great piece there. I think, obviously, as we're adding 2 massive games that we've announced already. One with Pudgy Penguins. We're doing a game called Pudgy Party, which if anybody happens to be in Miami tomorrow, we're actually going to reveal that game. We're going to be showing gameplay and let you play the game for the first time at Art Basel with Pudgy. So come out, let us know. But that's a game alone. I think it can be 25 to 50 million players pretty easily. Luca Netz is marketing extraordinaire, and that community is phenomenal. So that's already another 25 to 50 million consumers. I think they'll be coming to Polkadot via gaming. Obviously, we have FIFA launching next summer. That game is a $500 million player game. Now we'll see how fast we can convert people over, but I think we'll see at least 50 million people coming to the Polkadot ecosystem next year from that game alone. And then on top of that, obviously, we've been both building a lot on the Mythical platform side. so that companies, frankly, like Toby's company and other people that want to build and have the tool sets we've already built, the quick trades, the marketplace, all that functionality, crafting, all that stuff we've kind of spent effort behind, we want to let other people build. And we have probably 4 to 5 other games we'll be announcing very soon. A lot of them are more mass market games, the games that already have millions of players that are going to be coming on board as well. So I think you'll see Polkadot the #1 gaming chain by a mile next year. And it'll be, I mean, literally it could be 10x what anybody else has. So I think it's a big year for Polkadot in gaming, obviously.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yep. So I think two big differences in 2025 that I'm excited about. One is brand awareness, and we all know the ways in which we've spent money on sponsorship deals, many of which are amazing. Like we love Connor Daly. He's going to be a character hopefully in our game, one of our games, actually one of Mythical's games, Nitro Nation. And we also have some other big superstars, Mercedes Monet we've talked about. There are others lining up where we can have a digital version of somebody who has millions of followers in the real world be a sponsorship brand kind of carrier for Polkadot in these digital spaces and in games and experiences. So that's one. So digital sponsorship deals instead of physical. The second one is really long-term sustainability for the treasury. So we set this up not simply to be a BD unit where we give out money to games, but we're doing revenue share deals with all of these companies and with all of these game developers. We want everyone to make money, and especially we think the Polkadot treasury is going to get a pretty good return of money, return of capital from the projects that we're doing. I will say, be patient. Games take a little bit of time. So we're laying all the groundwork right now. We've received a lot of questions from the community, like, where's the money? We just got started. We're just now planting seeds. But when that money does start coming in, we'll be returning the bulk of it to the treasury. So we're pretty excited to see the impact there.
Yeah, from my side, I think it's a really interesting year ahead. I think, and I hope that kind of the stuff that happened last bull cycle with a lot of like projects popping up, promising the world in gaming and then disappearing, like how many are there still of these indie teams like Rome, whatever, like the things that we have still depression about, having invested in these things. So I think there is a general sense of quality, and kind of also the consumers have gotten much more, they ask for, you need to convince the users more in a way to get it, to get your product out there. It's just like empty promises aren't enough. And I think a lot of, we'll see a lot of people with experience now coming into the space and giving kind of the Web3 gaming also a better general name than it had during the last bull run, where like 80% of projects just like basically rocked the communities. And personally, my vision for this year will start tomorrow. Like we aim to be the portal for gamers to come into Polkadot as well. Like I think we three here align on this vision. And like this tomorrow we're opening the gates to get people from, and hopefully we can see that on chain as well. So we're hoping to have a lot of new wallets coming in, and open quite up a lot and steep up our own and bring up our operations. So next year is going to be pretty interesting. We're going to stop like inching forward and testing that stuff. We're having bigger releases. I'm still iterating a lot, and yeah, I'm super excited for the next 3 months, and like when on the weekend when I can hopefully finally sleep again, because the last days before a release were always crazy.
I think that's going to be a big theme for 2025 too. We're going to work really hard to find time to sleep. But that's really exciting. So we're coming up on time. So first, I'd like to thank you so much for participating in that discussion. Thank the audience for being here and listening in. And I'll give you the opportunity to give your final thoughts on what you're building, the outlook for this year, and where people can find you and learn about your projects. And let's, if we can do, whoever wants to go first.
I'll start. I was last all the time. I just thank you for having me. As I said, it's cool to be among these speakers here, and I just want to encourage everyone listening. Check out Evolute tomorrow. There is a big launch coming up. We're going to also raffle out a few hand-drawn drawings on medieval paper, like really cool stuff, really cool art tomorrow. And I want to see you all in Evolute tomorrow.
I can head up here next. So one, I do want to congrats Toby. Good luck on tomorrow. I'm excited to see that happen. That'll be great. I was checking it out earlier. I'll be refreshing as soon as the servers turn on. Again, I think we're going to see a lot of amazing stuff happening. Our focus is on the more mainstream. I think our goal is to get to closing in on that 100 million wallet type number, and I think it's actually doable. I think we can on the Polkadot ecosystem. I think we can get to over 100 million wallets within 6 quarters from now. So I think we're on that path, and I think it's a real path. We know the kind of pipeline that's coming for us. Again, I kind of shared, which I always said too earlier, is that what I'm probably most excited about what's happening, and obviously we're thinking about it from our perspective of people building on the Mythical platform with Mythos, but which is obviously secured by Polkadot. But I think right now, the big game developers are coming, and that's pretty awesome. And I think what's great about that is you're now, building a game is very difficult. Designing a game is hard. Shipping a game is much harder, and keeping a sustainable game is one of the hardest things I've had to deal with in my career. So it's a very hard process to get all the way through. But we're seeing now game developers have done this many times. And I think that's going to be exciting to see how they push the industry forward even further, right? So it's going to be a really exciting year for us, for Polkadot, for pretty much everybody involved with the ecosystem. So here's 2025.
I'll just say one more thing to I think you guys covered most of it, but I think the content flywheel is going to be really spinning in 2025. Toby, I'm so excited about Evolute too. We're going to get our whole team playing, and congrats to you. Very exciting. And then obviously, like, I talk about FIFA, I think probably a certain percentage of my day, which is probably too much to talk about one topic, but we're really excited about that, and Pudgy obviously as well. And then we've got a lot of content out of Roblox, Fortnite. I think we will. We've got some mobile games. We're going to have a content flywheel that is going to be spinning pretty quickly in 2025, and it's all going to revolve around this, idea of secured by Polkadot, powered by Polkadot.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a very exciting roadmap, and not just for next year, but even for the end of the year, there's going to be a lot to do around the holidays. So hope everybody enjoys that. And I believe that concludes our first Polkadot ecosystem webinar. So thanks again to our panelists. Thanks to the audience, and see you next time.
All right, thanks, Robert.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.